Good afternoon. It's Friday, November 6th. I'm Herman Green with your midday news. If you're watching on onespotmedia.com, a very special welcome to you. Thanks for joining us. We begin with the latest in the U.S. presidential election. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden has taken the lead in Pennsylvania. If Mr. Biden wins in that state, he would secure his victory in the election. The state has 20 electoral college votes.
The president cannot win re-election without Pennsylvania and without Georgia. Overnight, Georgia flipped blue. Seconds ago, Pennsylvania flipped to the blue. You cannot understate this moment. It's not over. Still counting votes. But Joe Biden now in the lead in Pennsylvania, in the lead in Georgia, in the lead in Nevada, in the lead in Arizona. More than enough to win the presidency right now. So let's see what just happened in Pennsylvania. It is blue right now. Remember, it was red in 2016. Donald Trump won the presidency in part because of this state. He was ahead, Donald Trump was, just moments ago by a little more than 18,000 votes. Joe Biden now, 5,587 votes ahead. The votes came in from right here in Philadelphia just moments ago. Joe Biden now at 313,000 votes. You see 95% of the vote in. Important to note, Wolf, there are still more votes to get. That's Montgomery County. I'm sorry, I touched the wrong line. 95% of the votes in Philadelphia, 80% from Philadelphia right here. As you watch the president, important to note, there are still more votes to come from Philadelphia, but they just updated their vote count. And as they did, again, the President of the United States moments ago had an 18,000 vote lead in Pennsylvania. Joe Biden now, 5,587 vote lead.
And as Americans wait to see who will win the White House, the U.S. economy is still struggling because of the COVID-19 pandemic. This as the U.S. is dealing with massive unemployment and no guarantee that a stimulus package will come anytime soon.
The U.S. economy is showing some signs of recovering from a rough second quarter.
The housing sector has fully recovered from the downturn, supported in part by low mortgage interest rates. Business investment has also picked up.
But Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, says COVID-19 is still crushing the economy.
Overall economic activity remains well below its level before the pandemic, and the path ahead remains highly uncertain.
Roughly 751,000 Americans claimed first-time jobless benefits last week, according to the Labor Department.
Every state's got the same problem. Every state has massive unemployment claims that it's paid much more than they expected.
Powell says a stimulus package would benefit the country, especially those who have lost their jobs due to COVID-19.
I think we'll have a stronger recovery if we can just get at least some more fiscal support when it's appropriate, when it's appropriate and in the size Congress thinks it's appropriate. I do think that will likely.
But Americans are going to have to wait. Stimulus talks between House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin are at a stalemate. But Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says a stimulus bill might be considered before 2021.
Meanwhile, the U.S. has once again set a new daily coronavirus case record. On Thursday, the country reported more than 121,000 new cases. That's according to data by Johns Hopkins University. This is a major jump from the previous record, which was set the day before. On Wednesday, more than 102,000 cases were reported. And one more person has died from COVID-19, bringing Jamaica's death toll to 218. The deceased is a 45-year-old woman from Trelawney. There was one coincidental death. That death was previously under investigation. The health ministry has also reported that one additional death is now under investigation. Meanwhile, the country's COVID-19 case count has climbed to 9,426 as 53 new cases were confirmed yesterday. Now, those ages range from 8 years to 80 years. St. James recorded the most cases, followed by Kingston and St. Andrew. The health ministry says 76 patients remain hospitalized. 6 of them are critically ill. And the health ministry says some Jamaicans are still resisting efforts by its teams to test them as the residents fear repercussions related to a positive COVID-19 result. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Jacqueline Bisesa McKenzie says stigma around COVID-19 has led to some persons being treated by community members.
Our team members have been faced with the issue of stigma, with persons refusing to be tested because they have been threatened. Persons who have been tested have been told, don't bother, make it come back positive. So we are still facing that issue, and it is not allowing us to get a good handle of what is happening in some of these communities that we have gone into because persons are not coming out to be tested.
Now, she is urging Jamaicans to recognize that it is in their best interest to get tested.
It is a good thing when your community is selected for intervention, because there's a recognition that there is a problem, and what it is that we want to do is to prevent that problem from getting worse. So when the public health team comes in, we should try to facilitate them as much as possible, because it is in your interest and in the interest of all the persons within that community for us to detect any cases quickly so that we can isolate those persons and be able to protect the rest of the community.
And the Ministry of Health is appealing to persons to speak with a medical doctor before testing for COVID-19. The country's chief medical officer says it's a dangerous practice which has implications on case management efforts. More in this report.
Testing for COVID-19 has been a stressful process for some persons. Since the first case of COVID-19 was announced in March this year, persons have been complaining about getting the test done for the virus in a timely manner. As some persons' patients started to grow thin, they have opted for private testing. But at a COVID-19 press briefing on Thursday, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Jacqueline Bisesa-McKenzie says a challenge faced by the ministry is that many persons are going straight to some facilities for testing before speaking with a medical doctor.
They do not have an interaction with a doctor. And so what is happening is that we may have persons who have symptoms that are going straight to laboratories or other places, having tests done, and then present at the health department or to the health department with a positive test.
Dr. Bisesa-McKenzie says it is a dangerous practice. She laments that testing is a critical part of managing a case. CMO also said a lot of things can happen before a positive or negative test result is returned.
So if persons are having signs or symptoms, then they should visit their doctor if those are not improving. And if they are required to do a test, there are certain things that the doctors will instruct them to do even before they get the test result if they are a suspected case. And I want to encourage persons to follow this process.
To date, 9,426 persons have contracted COVID-19, but the figure could be much higher. Dr. Bisesa-McKenzie says there are also situations where persons are getting back positive test results and choose not to report it to the ministry. She argued that this affects how the ministry deals with the overall management of this public health crisis.
It is also very important that any facility that has been approved by the ministry, that they do a report and send it into the ministry, because we need to have the information to be able to plan what it is that is to happen in the various areas where we have positive cases coming from. And it's not good enough only to report positive cases. We need to know the negative cases as well so that we can really see what the burden of disease is.
Prince Moore, TVJ News.
And it's time now for a break on the midday news, but stay with us. More news when we return. Welcome back, continuing the news. The Ministry of Health has started inspecting schools selected for the pilot phase of face-to-face reopening. Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says the protocols promoted on a national level to minimize the risk of COVID-19 are no different from what are expected by these schools. Shamela Pullen has the details.
Come next week, Monday, students and teachers from 17 public schools across the island will return to the classrooms for face-to-face learning. For most of the students, this would be their first physical classroom contact in nearly 9 months. But President of the Jamaica Teachers Association, Jasford Gabriel, says he was expecting a January schedule for the phased resumption of face-to-face classes at schools.
Given all that we need to do to get ready under the incidence of the spread of the COVID-19 and for more longevity when we do open, I thought we were more looking in terms of a January reopening for face-to-face on some kind of phased basis. What was not said to us at the committee level, it's at the press conference I would have known that it's the 9th. If without mentioning the schools, if that part of the discussion was shared, of that part of the decision was shared with us, then we would be in a position now to maybe ask for more precise and direct questions, given the short time frame that would have existed between when the announcement was made and the 9th.
At a Ministry of Health COVID-19 press briefing on Thursday, Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says the schools selected by the Education Ministry are deemed least risky. Dr. Tufton says these schools would have also implemented most of the protocols in a way that they can function while minimizing the risk.
I visited a number of schools as in my other life as a political representative in a constituency. And, there is a deliberate effort, even in those other schools that are not part of the 17, with the principals and others, including the ministry, to demarcate or to recognize spaces for, how you standing a line with the space. So they actually markers on the ground. There are more hand washing stations around the schools, all of this in aid of respecting the protocols around the virus.
In addition, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Jacqueline Bisesa Mackenzie says inspection of schools selected for the phased face-to-face reopening pilot has begun.
We have been working with the Ministry of Education in the parishes, our medical officers of health and our public health inspection teams have been in the schools and they have been doing their inspections. Some of those have been completed, I know. Some of them will require revisits because there are some things that need to be tweaked in order to make it ready. So I know that we're active out there and we're working with the Ministry of Education to ensure that everything goes well when we start.
Shamala Pulen, TVJ News.
And the Education Minister is urging school administrators to remain focused ahead of Monday's pilot restart of face-to-face classes. Speaking in Clarendon on Thursday, Favour Williams said she has been hearing the discussions about foreseen challenges and doubts in bringing back physical classes. But she says the objective of the pilot must not be lost.
There's a lot of conversation going around about it. I'm asking you to just stay focused on what it is that we're trying to do. We are ensuring that we have the best low-risk environment for our students to return into. It will be a 2-week learning process, and then at the end of the 2 weeks, we will take all that learning to help us to make the next decision about where we go from there with our schools.
The minister was speaking at the handing over of development plans for a new facility at the Maypen Infant School. The development comes out of a partnership between the Chase Fund and the Education Ministry. Central Clarendon MP Mike Henry lauded the development, indicating that improvement at this level is critical to education in general.
If the base is not in place, then the things are going to crumble and fall apart and create the problems. So when Madam Minister said education zone, Denby begins, and the Councillor for Denby is here. It begins in whether your basic schools are working, your infant schools are working, then your secondary schools are working.
The police are investigating a double murder in St. Elizabeth. The incident happened Thursday night, leaving residents in shock. Kirk Wright has the details.
A community in mourning, still struggling to process the horror that struck in Good Hope, St. Elizabeth last night. Residents say they heard loud explosions coming from a section of the community and later discovered the bodies of 2 men suffering from gunshot wounds.
So one time, maybe it's about to know, when time listen up here, it's a popping light. I told my mom, I used to gunshot business and all that. So when I take a video, I see, I feel like I feel fire, I take the house, I on fire. I find out I straight me again. And when me tell you know me and say, everyone dead. And when I tell me in Jamaica, I'm built too. I so come me get people in the
Dead is 53-year-old Evan Robinson and 40-year-old Delmore Castillo. Both are from Good Hope.
Man, more upset, man. Last night, Pierre Chamberlain with the pan, man. But I forced me to witness it like that. So I never know no as that happened about in a family pressure on your side of me. So I don't know them as no wrongdoer, so I don't know otherwise.
TVJ News understands that the deceased were ordered outside their house by men impersonating police officers. When they responded, the gunmen then opened fire, hitting them all over their bodies. The men died on the scene. An attempt to get a response from head of the St. Elizabeth Police was unsuccessful. Kirk Wright, TVJ News.
A desperate plea for help this afternoon from a mother of 3 in Oxford District on the border of Manchester and St. Elizabeth. As we hear in this report from O'Shane Masters, the mother, who has fallen on hard times, is in need of a home and assistance for her children.
Meet 27-year-old Moya McLeish, a resident of Oxford District on the border of Manchester and St. Elizabeth. Moya, who has 3 children, an 8-year-old boy and 2 girls, ages 1 and 3, is asking for assistance to build a house. Currently, they are living in a 1-bedroom which is part of her mother's home. However, the condition is not adequate for the family of 4. Among the challenges, when it rains, the roof leaks. Of greater concern to Moya is this crack in the wall and the deteriorating floorboards of the room she now resides in. An emotional Moya told TVJ News that the pressures of her struggle has led to her thinking of taking her life as her situation is unbearable.
We just don't want the kids them grow up and see me every day. I cry and so forth. Because sometimes it's struggling. Sometimes the things that the impact we get from people, like sometimes when things got difficult or they ask you something and I not have it, I kind of feel upset because sometimes I take out the anger upon them.
She says it's the love from her children that keeps her going.
Sometimes, especially my son, sometimes he come and kneel down and I say to me, Mommy, I feel sorry for you and stuff. Sometimes if he does say some things to me, sometimes I rush him and other times we just cry and we hug me up and so forth. But me just don't want them grow up every day and see me go through his struggles and so forth.
She, however, noted that though she has fallen on hard times, she wants the best for her children. She recounted some experiences from her own life.
Enough up and down, me go through like my mother give me way to people to help me and so forth, but the people in mistreat you and treat you bad, so me don't want none of them go live with nobody and then treat them bad.
They didn't really have it when they were young. We go through a really hard, we struggling life, really hard life. Sometimes a hard grief and sometimes a rougher, really hard sometimes the way. Because sometimes I am so frustrated, sometimes they don't have food, and sometimes things is really rough. So sometimes I rough her, and she feel like I don't really love her, but I love all my children, but it is very hard.
She says she depends on help from one of the child's father and her job as a hairdresser to get by. Moya, however, noted that she does not have any certification in cosmetology, but wants to be qualified. O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
And we go on to news overseas. More than 50 people are feared dead following landslides and flooding caused by tropical depression Eta. Addressing the press late on Thursday, the country's president said at least 25 homes were buried in the central area of San Cristobal with approximately 50 people inside. Rescue crews are en route to the area on foot because roads have been destroyed by the severe rains. More than 3,300 people have been impacted by landslides and floods resulting from the heavy rains. Eta made landfall along the coast of Nicaragua as a Category 4 hurricane on Tuesday. It is now projected to head towards Cuba and then onto the U.S. coast. We're going on to news and sports. Despite the West Indies' poor track record in New Zealand, Jamaican all-rounder Rovman Powell says the T20 squad is already getting into the right frame even as they settle down in that country. The West Indies have only a solitary win against the Kiwis in 7 T20 internationals, but for Powell, there is a new sense of belief in the squad since the appointment of Kieran Pollard and Phil Simmons as captain and coach respectively.
Yeah, to be honest, I think this squad can turn it around. You know, New Zealand hasn't been a easy place, not just for us, but other overseas team to tour. You know, but if you look on the strength and the depth of the squad, I think it's a pretty good one. You know, the captain and the coach has stressed on us playing the brand of cricket that we want to play leading up to the World Cup, and all the guys have buy into that brand of cricket, and I think it will bear fruit.
Meanwhile, Powell says even with his below par showing in the CPL, he's keen to turn around his form in the upcoming series.
Yeah, definitely. You know, it's an important tour, not just to the West Indies team, but also for me. You know, you mentioned not scoring a lot of runs in CPL. You know, that is behind me. You know, it was a difficult competition for me, but, you know, brighter things now. You know, I have 3 T20 games here that I'm looking forward to. So hopefully I can put my best foot forward with quality training sessions leading up to this game.
And that's it for the Midday News. I'm Herman Green. Please join us at 7 for the Primetime News Package. On behalf of the News, Sports and Production teams, good afternoon.